Good morning. It is Friday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabari here with Mark Zinno. Zinno, how are we? How was your trip to Denver?
It was fantastic, an excellent city. But Lauren, you neglected. It's Friday the 13th.
Oh, it
Scary.
is, isn't it? I didn't even realize that until right in this moment that you're right. It is Friday the
Our rookie
13th.
teammates.
So,
I pick you up where you were lacking. So there you go.
hey, thank you. You make up for what I lack, Zinno. The best work relationship ever. You love to see it. We have a lot to get into today. We have Dalen Cuff coming on from ESPN. He's going to be talking college basketball with us. We have two NFL games going on tomorrow. We're going to quickly break those down because Zinno and I are on the show again together tomorrow. So we're going to be breaking those games down more in depth tomorrow morning. Then we have NFL fact or cap. Are we telling the truth? Are we telling a lie with some of the statements that I have? And you can tell me, is it true or is it false? And then we cannot end with our Pickswise 3-star play of the day and our best bets of the day. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's bet it on Friday the 13th. Hopefully our bets are not unlucky. First of all, let's take it to some of these Saturday games. There's two of them. 6 games on the whole slate this weekend, 2 on Saturday. Seahawks taking on the 49ers. The 49ers laying 9.5 points. That total is set right now at 42. It is time for the NFL playoffs, baby. 2 NFC West rivals that already played twice this year. The 49ers swept this series. The Seahawks made it in with a win and a Packers loss after week 18. I'm still bummed, Zeno, about my Detroit Lions, but that's neither here nor there. It all came down to a Baker Mayfield deep interception in overtime, but it's okay. You can't rely on Baker. They're going to be underdogs, though, and they want to prove everyone wrong because they really haven't, had much expectation on them this season. I feel like everything that they've done has kind of proved people wrong. But San Fran, I feel like, has all the pressure on their shoulders right now. They're the number 2 seed in the NFC. They want to win the whole thing. They're currently on a 10-game win streak. They have rookie Brock Purdy under center until Jimmy G comes back. Would you feel comfortable laying the 9.5 points? Because that is a lot of points, but at the same time, you look at how much better the 49ers team is in general on both sides of the ball, and you maybe could make an argument for it.
Well, let me handicap it this way under the context of that. My favorite play in this game is the under 42.5. I'm already locked in. I know the
Okay.
numbers moving in a little bit. So I say
Yeah.
that to say that San Francisco won the first 2 matchups rather easily. They only allowed 1 offensive touchdown in each of those first 2 games. Seattle comes in limping. They lost 5 of their last 7. Geno Smith has thrown 7 interceptions over that span. And this is a game I
Hmm.
think that's decided on third down. Niners are 6th best in the NFL converting third downs on offense, while Seattle 27th in the league on defense in allowing third down conversions. But since this total is so low, and I expect a low scoring game, you know what it's really hard to do then? Clear a double digit
What?
spread in a low scoring game.
Yeah.
So it's Seattle or pass for me. I think if there's one team this weekend that can cover the big number, and I say this again, caveating Miami and Buffalo, depending on where that number finally lands, now that we know that Skylar Thompson is playing. Between these big numbers, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Miami, Buffalo, and Seattle, San Fran, I think Seattle is the one that can cover. So for me, it's Seattle or pass as far as the side is, but I am all in on the
Hmm.
under in this game.
Yeah, I agree on the under too. The Niners defense is honestly what's going to carry them through the postseason at this point. They have the
Yeah.
best total DVOA in the NFL. They're only allowing 16.3 points per game, which is first in the NFL. And they held the Seahawks to a total of 20 points over 2 games
Yes.
this season. 2 games, only 20 points, which is wild. And they have 30 total takeaways. They're going to be putting a lot of pressure on Geno
Can we
Smith
just
in this
add one
game.
thing?
Yeah,
Can we just add one thing about San Francisco?
yes.
Guys, you have to do a little bit diving into the numbers here. This just in, Brock Purdy is not like a high level quarterback. I mean, he's benefiting from getting 3 and 4 turnovers per game from this defense. Look, that doesn't mean that, the 49ers stink or they can't win. Of course they can win. They can be in the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy because of their defense. But
Yeah.
let's not act like Brock Purdy, if San Francisco isn't getting turnovers, that he's going to march the team down the field on 8, 10 play drives and go 70, 80 yards on a routine basis and put up point. Like, that's just not who he is yet.
Yeah.
So this is
It's
not
true.
a San Francisco offense on its own that scores a lot of points without the help of a defense. So that's part of the other reason why I like the under.
Here's the thing. I do like Brock Purdy. I feel like he's kind of proven himself. He's not phenomenal by any means, but he's solid. He's thrown 13 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions in the games that he's played so far. So he's protecting the ball and he's being able to convert in the red zone. And a lot of that has to do with the pieces that are around him at the same point. but they're still getting it done. And their defense is what's really holding them together. Their defense held 8 of their last 10 opponents to under 20 points, and the total has gone under in 4 of the last 5 Seattle Seahawks games. So something to definitely keep in mind. We'll be breaking down that game a little bit more tomorrow too. But let's move on to the 8:15 Eastern Time PM game tomorrow night. The Chargers taking on the Jags. Right now, the Jags getting 2.5 points. The Chargers laying 2.5. This one was weird. It was like the Chargers laying 1.5. The Chargers pick them. Now they're laying 2.5 points. It's moved around a little bit, but team that got in the last moment, the Jags, after defeating the Titans in Week 18, they're the 4th seed in the AFC. They want to take advantage of home field. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now, and the Chargers are the 5 seed in the AFC, and they're hoping to not, as we like to say, Charger. They've won 4 of their last 5 games to get to this point. And they did what they needed to do to end their postseason drought since not being in since 2019. The Jags, though, this is wild to me. At the beginning of December, they were 4-8. At the beginning of December, this last month and week of the season, like, they turned it around thanks to Trevor Lawrence and basically the defense that held its last 5 opponents to an average of under 16 points per game. I feel like this game is a tough one to call, but where do you kind of see the edge? Because the Jags right now are a home dog.
Yeah, you talked about Trevor Lawrence, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions over his last 9 games. Now, throw out the Week 3 matchup between these two teams where the Jaguars won 38-10. Los Angeles was not healthy then. They were a completely different team. You got to give the coaching edge here to Doug Peterson and the Jaguars over Brandon Staley and the Chargers. But there's an interesting thing here happening in the marketplace with this game. And let's just look objectively at this. As far as money line tickets, because this is a short number, you're getting 62% of the money line tickets on the Los Angeles Chargers, yet 69% of the money line money is going to the Jaguars. And here is what I think is genuinely happening here, because bookmakers have had to adjust since the market, and we've gotten an influx of new bettors over the last couple of years and the way things do. You've heard that. I don't know if you've heard the deal about the teases during Wild Card Weekend, where for the last couple of years you could tease in either direction and you'd still hit. There is a sense that with this game that books are leaving this number back at 2.5, begging bettors to tease the Jaguars up as one of the possible legs, whether it's with Tampa Bay, that's also 2.5, or maybe the Giants, if you had them at 2.5 earlier in the week. One of those teams as a possible teaser leg probably is going to get blown out and lose handily. And that's kind of what I think the books are doing here, leaving this number where it is. They're telling you the liability is with the Jaguars and leaving that number where it is because you're paying a little bit extra juice to take the 2.5 points here. I'm really conflicted and torn. My head keeps telling me Jaguars. A lot of sharp people I know are on the Chargers, and I get why. I mean, I don't think there's an argument that the Chargers are the more talented team and have the better roster. I don't think that's really up for debate. I mean, Justin Herbert is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. That's not up for debate either. It's just a question of how these things play on the field. My biggest hiccup is that the Chargers always seem to be involved in 3- and 4-point games. Always. Like, it's just, so while the tease feels like the best way to play this, I'm just weary overall in this game. So I do have, and full disclosure, I have the Jaguars in 2 different teases, but I got it when it was at 1.5. I got it earlier in the week. Everything I did was earlier in the week, which helped me out with Cincinnati. It helped me out with a couple other games, including Minnesota. So I'm kind of stuck where I am, hoping the Jaguars win this thing.
I know this one is going to be interesting. The one thing I will note is the Jags are 0-5 ATS in their last 5 home games against the Chargers. I know that dates back a couple seasons, but at the same time, it is a trend that has. And the Chargers' scoring margin in those games is plus 16. Again, different teams, different quarterbacks, different vibes, but who knows? I have a hard time reading this game. I'm going to just watch this one and be excited to see what happens in it. But I like your Jaguars. I'm kind of rooting for Trevor Lawrence, to be honest with you. I feel like the Jags are it's crazy to me that they were 4-8 at the beginning of December. Truly, the postseason was so far out of reach, and the fact that they turned it around within the span of 5.5 months.
Can I just
what?
Without taking a dump on the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, like, they played the Texans and the Titans and the Colts down the stretch.
It's
like,
true.
I mean, the
It's true.
division was so bad. It was so
Yeah.
bad. And I don't want to take the Titans were a banged up team. They were a shell of themselves by the end of the season
Mhm.
than what they were at the beginning of
Mhm.
the year when they went 7-3. So that's it's unfair. But the other two teams in that division are so bad. So it's like, here's a couple of gifts for you in December where you don't have to play anybody worthwhile.
Yeah, that's actually true. Which brings us into NFL fact or cap, which is true or false. Is this a fact or is it a lie? I know Trevor Lawrence outplays Justin Herbert tomorrow. Fact or cap?
I mean, define outplays. The short answer is no. He won't. That's a better passing offense for LA. They're more dynamic. They have more weapons all around. Austin Eckler is a
Yeah,
great pass catching back out of the backfield. That should aid his numbers overall. So I don't think Trevor Lawrence outplays Justin. Oh, by the way, Trevor Lawrence almost didn't outplay Joshua Dobbs in that game against Tennessee. Like he almost did it. Like, I mean, he missed a lot of throws in that game,
yeah,
particularly a wide open Christian Kirk in the end zone. So Jaguars backers who were laying the 6 points there were really ticked off at him missing that wide open one. They should have won that game by a lot more than 6
I know.
points, but Tennessee comes out with the cover. So, no, the short answer is that's a lie.
Speaking of covering, and I think I know how you're going to answer this one because we just talked about it. The 49ers win in advance, but the Seahawks get the backdoor cover at 9.5.
Yeah, I think that's true. As I said, if there is one team, Pete Carroll has done phenomenally well against the 49ers in his career. He knows how to counter Kyle Shanahan. This isn't an incredibly talented Seahawks team, but still they've figured
Mm-hmm.
out a way to slow down the San Francisco offense and the San Francisco coach that usually can exploit other teams. So if Geno Smith takes care of the football, then there's no reason why Seattle can't cover in this one.
Can't cover it. Yeah. Okay. This one's an interesting one to me, and we're going to bring in Dalen in a second to talk college basketball. Three more factor caps for you. Monday night is Tom Brady's last playoff game. Is that fact or is that cap?
That's a cap. That's a lie. Tom Brady's going to
He
continue.
comes back again?
Of course he does. He's got way too many options between San Francisco and Las Vegas. With him
True.
having those two possible landing destination spots, and him signing a 1-year deal at like $20 million because he doesn't care about the money. Absolutely no. This is definitely a playoff game.
What about Tyler Huntley playing for the Ravens and they get a backdoor cover? They also are getting 9.5 points against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday.
Okay, I'm going to lean on the fact that that's a lie. Here's what I
You have to
didn't
say
look
it
at
like cool. You have to say it cool, Zeno. Like that's a cap. Come on. We're being trendy here. Let's go.
let me bust a cap right here to you. Okay,
Yeah.
how's that sound?
Let's hear it. Love that.
I went back to the matchups from last year where Cincinnati beat Baltimore 41-17, particularly the one that they beat them in Cincinnati. Here's the problem. Cincinnati got out to a fast start in that game, and it was 24-7 in the second quarter. If Cincinnati gets, let's just say they build a 14-3 lead, a 17-7 lead, God forbid 21-7 lead. Tell me how the Ravens offense, which is only averaging 13 points a game without Lamar Jackson, gets back in the game, right?
Yeah,
so
they don't.
they have no ability to score quick and score from behind. Without Cincinnati laying it down in the second half last week after they were up 24-7 at half, without them, the Ravens don't even come close to getting back in that game. And so the Ravens have no come from behind ability. They have to play with a lead the whole game. And it's going to be really hard for them to do that unless they have a ton of success running the football. So the reason why I say that that's a cap is that,
there's no way they score points in that game. No way.
There's a world where the Ravens can cover because John Harbaugh is an excellent coach and his team is never unprepared. But he also just doesn't have the horses in the barn in this game to be able to keep up. And that's really a problem. No, I don't think the Ravens can cover this.
Last but not least, the Giants will be heading to Philly next weekend after proving that the Vikings are fraudulent.
I'm wearing my Giants shirt here today and pointing to the wrong side. Look,
you hate to see it.
I'm a diehard Giants fan and hope that they win. But objectively, the better in me and the handicapper in me loves the Vikings this week. Loves the Vikings this week, especially. And I'm going to wait until kickoff because I feel pretty confident at 2.5 is coming back up. And it's interesting the
Mm-hmm.
fact that when you look at the way the market has gone for this game, about how much money is coming on the Giants, 90% of the spread money is on the Giants here. 90%. And the books have not moved this off 3 at all. They're telling you something, and they're almost,
Mm-hmm.
asking you to take the Giants repeatedly. Let me ask you this question. When these two teams met on Christmas Eve, which is now what, 3 weeks ago, somewhere in that range, what has changed dynamically about either one of these two teams? The short answer is nothing. So why did the line move down a point? It shouldn't have. The Vikings should be favored by 4. There's value on the Vikings here. And I will remind everybody this. Regardless of what Minnesota did for 17 games and how many close games they won, you know how much that matters in a 1-game sample set in the playoffs? 0. It matters none. So it goes right out the window. I don't care how many close games they played in the regular season. In the playoffs, it's a totally different animal, and none of this stuff carries over at all. So for everybody who wants to say the Vikings are a fraud, knock yourself out. You might not be wrong about that, but you're also denying the fact that this is still a really good team, especially offensively, and that's a bad Giants pass defense. And oh, by the way, player prop for me, we'll talk about it more tomorrow, but Daniel Jones over 234.5 yards. We're locked in for that as well.
I like
because Vikings pass defense is bad, and he went for 340 last time against it. But anyway, long story short is I'm hoping the Giants win. I'm hoping the Giants win. I just don't think it happens.
The Giants have the better coach right now. The Vikings have the better quarterback and the lesser defense. I lean the Giants. I want the Giants to win. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. We're going to be breaking down all those games more in depth tomorrow. But right now, let's bring in our guy, Dalen Cuff, broadcaster, college basketball in-studio analyst for ESPN, to chat college basketball season, because that, my friend, is heating up. Dalen, how are you? Happy Friday. I almost forgot what day it was.
Happy Friday. I'm good. Good to be on with you guys. I join you from lovely Dayton. I have the VCU Dayton game tonight, and I haven't seen the sun in about 36 hours. But other than that, we're good.
Welcome to the Midwest. I am actually in Indiana right now for the Hawks-Pacers game tonight. So, yes, it is a beautiful Midwest that is snowy and gross. And, well, best of luck with your game tonight. Let's take it to UConn, another game that's up here, probably cold there. What do you make right now of UConn's losing skid? They've lost 3 of the last 4 games, dropped down a little bit in the standings.
Yeah, defensively, they've just not been what they were before. I mean, this team and Danny Hurley's image is built on the defensive side of the ball first. Tough, physical, but they have guards that can score. They got a big and Adama Sanogo. It's one of the best in the country. Donovan Clingan, the freshman's been great. But if they don't do what they're supposed to do on the defensive end, they're not going to be the team we saw for the first 2 months of the season. And basically, teams are scoring about 1.1 points per possession in those 3 of those 4 games that they lost. Prior to that, if you got to 0.9, which is elite, that was a heck of a performance against the Huskies. So defensively, they just have not been great on the ball. It's the simple thing. Can you keep the man in front of you? And now there's great guard play in the Big East, and they've suffered through that. So this team is still capable of getting there. These are all road losses. They were a top 5 team for a couple of them. The crowds are tough, and that's not that shocking. It's just their performance on the defensive side of the ball was a bit disappointing, and I think they will get that right. They're still a national championship contender, but they've got to compete on both ends consistently.
Don, I wanted to focus your attention on the Big 12 here, the deepest and strongest conference in college basketball this year. Now, it's really early. The most teams that ever went to an NCAA tournament from one conference was the Big East back in 2011. They sent 11 teams here. If I had to ask you right now, over or under 8.5 teams from the Big 12 to get in the NCAA tournament, do you think it could go over?
No, I don't think we're going to go over. I think we're going to go under. I think they're going to get 8 in. It's just there's just the cannibalization of the league. You're going to beat each other up through the course of it. And Texas Tech right now, unfortunately, they do not have a resume, and I don't think they're going to be able to put forth the resume because that's old school. That's a true round robin. That is 18 games. Those venues are brutal. The teams are really well coached. You know the teams very well. I don't think Texas Tech's going to put together the resume. Oklahoma State's had some tough, tight losses. Oklahoma up double digits on the road in Fog Allen with 5 minutes to go. You got to win that game. You got to win that game. It's so painful. You could see it happen, and it's like last night with Gonzaga. It's just really hard to beat those teams to just have that institutional knowledge and know they're going to win the game. And Jalen Wilson said afterwards, we always win these games. Just blows right by. They were down 11 with 5 minutes to go. They win the game in regulation. So Oklahoma and Texas Tech, I'm concerned about their resume given what they've done, the losses they've had. Tech in particular, Oklahoma's still capable of it, but I think those 2 teams are most likely, and maybe Oklahoma State, to get left out. So I'm looking at under 8.5 there, but that's still 80% of the league. That's pretty good.
What about Kansas State? Because right now they're 15-1 on the season, 9-0 at home. They've won 9 straight. Are they the real deal this year?
No doubt about it. I think it's
Yeah.
funny. I think they were getting 9.5 at Texas like 10 days ago. That was one of my favorite plays of that day. I wasn't sure they were for real, but I thought they'd keep within the number. And then they hung 116 on them. So, yes, they are legit. Marquise Noel is one of the best. He's been outstanding. And Keontae Johnson's a story that I think people will maybe remember. He was the SEC preseason player of the year back in 2021, and he collapsed because of cardiac arrest, similar to what we saw with DeMar Hamlin just a couple weeks ago against Florida State in a game in November of 2020, and now was not able to play. He stepped on the floor in his quote-unquote senior night for Florida, transfers to K-State, gets the full bill of health. Guy's getting 19 a game. He's right now, him and Jalen Wilson, a Big 12 player of the year in my mind. And Marquise Noel's right there. And so those two dudes have driven them forward. Jerome Tang is up for National Coach of the Year. They've retooled that entire roster. They've got staying power. Will they win the Big 12? I don't know about that. That is the toughest league in college basketball. Will they be in the top 3 or 4? And will they be a higher seed, maybe a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? I do think they will put together that resume. And Johnson Noel are outstanding. And I hope people pay attention to his story because it is a remarkable comeback story for a man that may never play a sport again to be back at the elite of college basketball and probably going to get a paycheck to play someday. It's pretty nice.
Dalen, the Xavier Musketeers, 13-3. All 3 of their losses to ranked teams. This is an offense that is as good as any in the country. They play fast. Is their defense problematic enough for you to believe that they won't be a Final Four team?
Yes, that's my concern. They when you look at historically right now where teams are in terms of their offensive and defensive efficiency, to win it all, Final Four maybe, but to win it all, you usually got to be in the top 20 of both. Right now, they're in the top 10 of offensive efficiency, and they are a veteran team. Experience matters. They've got, I think they're top 20 in the nation in terms of experience. They have minutes continuity. I'm top 30 in the nation in terms of bringing back guys that played together. They got a bunch of guys that can put on the deck and score. They've got bigs. They've got everything on the offensive side of the ball. They've got to compete defensively consistently, and that they have not done. They're outside the top 60 in defensive efficiency, and at times that they just think they can outscore you, and that by and large can work in the regular season, and by and large can work in a lot of tournament games. But not every tournament game. So that concerns me as far as winning a championship, getting to a Final Four. You're going to hear this from every one of us analysts and whatever we're talking about. Is there are no great teams right now in college basketball. There's some really good teams and some teams that may become a great team, but there's no dominant force. So there's going to be, when you look at the bracket, 12, 16, 20 teams you could think could maybe get to a Final Four, which seems more than I've thought of in recent years. But to actually cut down the nets, I think they're going to have to be better on the defensive end, and that is where Sean Miller comes from. That's kind of his backbone. So I wonder if they do improve through the course of this season because they're going to need to.
And you know what happens real quick? And sorry.
Oh no, you
know what happens real quick to a team like Xavier who shoots 50%? All it takes is one bad stretch of shooting to keep a team, to allow a team that's not in the game to get back in the game, and all of a sudden you're pressing, and every shot that seemed easy when you were up by 7 or 8 now all of a sudden gets a little bit more tense, and that's how you get got.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's why you got to get. That's why defense being stout on the defensive end is critical because when you go through those spells, which do happen in every tournament game, can you sustain it? Can you sustain it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see so many teams start to miss those shots, and then kind of you see that trickle over to the defensive game as well. They drop their heads. They're not playing as good of defense, and those games end up being blowouts. We see it time and time again in college basketball, in the NBA. So very interesting. When I look at the slate this weekend, a couple big games stand out to me. Kansas taking on Iowa State. Obviously, Xavier taking on Marquette. What games stand out to you, and what are you most looking forward to watching this weekend?
I think the Kansas game is going to be interesting because you asked before, is Kansas State for real? Iowa State, they muck it up, man. They're going to press you. They're going to change defenses. They're going to try to turn you over, and Kansas really does take care of the ball very well. They've got DeJuan Harris as one of the best guards in the country. I think that game, I think, is something that's kind of going to show where Iowa State is and what they're capable of. And I think Kansas is still the class of that league, and they showed it again the other night. But there's a number of games, whether it's in the Big East or the SEC, that you're gonna circle on the calendar and say we've got to see these teams kind of starting to emerge. Who as we getting to the first couple weeks of league play, to the point, who's a contender and who's a pretender, who's really able to strap it up week in and week out and be able to contend at the highest level. And I think that's what we kind of find in January, and in February you start to see teams that are desperate to build their resume kind of fall into form there, and teams begin to separate themselves.
Can hang with Tennessee. It's been a down Wildcats.
Say that again. Sorry, you cut out there for me.
Yeah, you totally cut out,
Sorry. Well, dear Lord. I mean, Can Kentucky hang with
Internet.
Tennessee this weekend? It's been a down year for the Wildcats. Can they hang with the Volunteers tomorrow?
Kentucky's a hot mess, guys. Just an absolute hot mess. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing offensively. I just don't understand what. I don't know what they don't know what they're doing. And Cal's trying to find it and trying to figure it out offensively. And that was the sad part the other day. We were in studio for that, the South Carolina game, where they were 20-point favorites. And I thought about it, like, do I really take the Gamecocks plus 20? And coming off of shellacking at Alabama, I figured it would be tight to the number. Not for the game. I didn't think it would be a one-possession game, and they would lose on their home floor. That's a mess. And to go into Thompson Bowling Arena, and the body language those guys had in Kentucky, they just looked defeated from the tip. Like they got down early and just looked like they were lost and didn't have it, and it looked ugly. So when you go into Tennessee, man, they will punch you in the mouth from the tip, and they're going to be physical, and they are tough to score on.
That's a good defense.
As I said, Kentucky really struggles. So I do not see that being that competitive. The line is. I haven't seen any early line on that yet. I would imagine because it's Kentucky, though, you can't overexpose yourself, but it's got to be. If it's anything less than 7, I would be 8. I would be shocked, just because I just don't know how they compete with Tennessee. Now, of course, when I say that, they do, because they still have talent. They still have talented players, and they are injured too. Jacob Toppin, Cason Wallace, they've got problems offensively. They got problems with health, and they got problems with the intangibles. And Tennessee has none of those issues. Tennessee's rolling.
It's going to be so fun to see how the rest of this college basketball season plays out. Dalen, we so appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the nice warm weather that you have going on in Dayton, and best of luck with your game.
Well, I live in Connecticut. It's a boring tundra there, too, so I don't know what I'm complaining about. But anyway, you guys have a good weekend.
That's true. That is Dalen Cuff. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. He's a college basketball analyst for ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Dalen Cuff. Love that. I'm breaking down the college basketball season. Before we get into our best bets of the day, Zeno, let's bet it, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no one across the pond setting lines for American sports, just the best team of traders in the business at the Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, some of the best odds boosts and promo bets in the country. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to start your battle against Vegas. From superbook.com to Pickswise.com, 3-star plays of the day. Do we have any on the site today?
There are always 3-star plays up on the Pickswise.com. Pickswise Nation, although none of them apply to anything going on today. So they all center around Wild Card Weekend starting tomorrow, soccer play as well tomorrow.
Totally.
But nothing for today's action. So go check out all the plays on Pickswise.com for your 3-star plays of the day.
Love that. All right, our best bets. Please hit me with yours first because I'm taking mine to the ice.
All right, going to the hardwood in college today, and some of you may call this a dumpster dive, but this is a conference I know well because my alma mater used to play in it before they transferred to the Patriots League. We go to the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. Iona Gales, the pride of New Rochelle, New York, taking on the Fairfield Stags tonight. Iona laying a hefty number at 14.5. They should be. Why? Because they are a more dominant team than Fairfield is. This is an Iona team that's top 50 in the nation in scoring. Where is Fairfield? 323rd in scoring and 348th in field goal percentage. This is a terrible offense that cannot find the bucket. Iona, in their last 5 conference games, until they just lost to Quinnipiac the other night, they were 4-0, and they won those 4 conference games by a margin of 24 points per game. Rick Pitino has his team coming off a loss. They'll be refocused. They are returning back home after a 2-game road trip to face a Fairfield team, as I said a moment ago, that struggles offensively. I was a little weary of taking this in the first half because I've seen some of these games start out a little bit closer, but for a full 40 minutes, Iona is a much better team. Rick Pitino and the Iona Gales tonight will cover this 14.5 at home against Fairfield.
I'm taking it from the hardwood to the ice. There's only 3 games on the slate tonight, but I'm looking at the Jets taking on the Penguins. And the Penguins 60-minute money line at -113. Their full game money line, like regular, -184. A little too juicy for me. But the Pens have looked pretty good recently. They're looking for their 3rd straight win. I know they've only won 3 of their last 10 games, but they have a solid home record. They're 11-4-4, and they have an extra night of rest. They haven't played since Tuesday. Now the Jets, They're on the second half of a back-to-back. They won against the Sabres last night. They are 6-1 in their last 7 games, and they've been playing really well this season. A lot of that thanks to their netminder, Connor Hellebuck. He has had a hell of a season, I'll just say. 2.41 goals against average, 925 save percentage. But tonight, second half of back-to-back, it's most likely going to be David Rittich between the pipes tonight. And in his last 10 games, he has a 2.75 goals against average, 905 save percentage. But against the Pens, he's 0-2 with a 3.45 goals against average in his career and an 892 save percentage. On the Penn side, their defense is only giving up 3.03 goals per game. Casey DeSmith hasn't been phenomenal. Tristan Jarry's not going to be in. He's been out for the last week since having a lower body injury he suffered during the Winter Classic on it was beginning of January. But Casey DeSmith, I know he's only 5-8-2 in the season, 3.17 goals against average, 904 save percentage. I lean the Pens 60-minute money line here. One, because of their offense, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, solid offense. They should be able to get a few past Rittich. And because the Jets have been so good this season because of Connor Hellebuck. He's not playing tonight. I don't trust David Rittich as much. Also, with the Jets being on the second half of a back-to-back, I feel like their legs might be a little tired. They'll be a little bit slower. And the Pens are 7-1 at home against the West this season. So lock it on up. Pens 60-minute money line, -113. That is it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be back with you tomorrow breaking down Wild Card Weekend. Until then, let's get it. Let's bet it.